Mama Okafor clutched her worn wrapper tighter around her frail body, her eyes wide with disbelief as she stared at the towering silhouette of her son framed against the fluorescent lights. Behind her, Papa Okafor, his weathered face gray with exhaustion and illness, slumped against the hood of a gleaming Rolls-Royce worth more than their entire village. Chakuma? Mama's voice cracked, the word barely a whisper. We are your parents. Your blood. We traveled 2 days to reach you. Your father's heart. Keep your voice down. Chakuma hissed, his designer suit pristine against the oil-stained floor. His eyes, once warm with the love of a grateful son, now darted nervously toward the mansion's main house, where laughter and music from his pre-engagement party filtered to the night air. Do you want to ruin everything I built? The old woman's legs buckled. Her husband caught her, though he could barely stand himself, his hand pressed against his chest where his failing heart struggled with each beat. We raised you, Papa Okafor wheezed, his voice carrying the weight of betrayal. We sold our only land to pay your school fees. Your mother washed clothes in the stream until her hands bled. That was your choice. Chakuma snapped, pulling out a thick envelope of Naira notes and throwing it at their feet. The bills scattered across the concrete like fallen leaves. Here, take this. Go to a hotel. Come back in 2 weeks when everyone is gone. Better yet, go back to Mbaku. I'll send money for the hospital. Mama Okafor stared at the money, then at her son, this stranger in expensive clothes who smelled of foreign cologne. Tears carved paths down her wrinkled cheeks. We cannot even enter your house? She asked, her voice breaking. We who gave you life. Chukwuma's jaw tightened. Through the garage's side window, he could see his fiancée, Zainab, the senator's daughter, draped in gold and silk, laughing with Lagos's elite. She believed he was an orphan from old money. They all did. My guests think I'm an orphan, he said coldly, straightening his bow tie. From a wealthy family that died in a plane crash. That's the story. That's who I am now. You! He gestured dismissively at their dusty traveling clothes, their callous hands, their humble bearing. You don't fit into that story. The words hung in the air like poison. Then we will sleep here, Papa Okafor said quietly, lowering himself onto the cardboard boxes stacked in the corner. Among your cars, like dogs, because we are your parents and we have nowhere else to go. Chukwuma's hand froze on the door handle. For a moment, just a fleeting second, something flickered in his eyes. Guilt? Shame? But then laughter erupted from the mansion, and his face hardened back into a mask of cold determination. Don't let anyone see you, he warned, and slipped back into the light and warmth of his glittering world, leaving his parents in the darkness. Mama Okafor collapsed into her husband's arms, her sobs muffled against his thin chest. Outside, fireworks exploded in celebration of Chukwuma's engagement, while inside the garage, the two people who had sacrificed everything for him huddled together on cardboard, surrounded by machines worth millions, feeling poorer than they had ever felt in their village. This was the moment when love died and shame was born. But this was only the beginning. Hello, guys. Welcome to my African Tales. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and share it with your friends. And most important thing, turn your notification bell so you can get informed when I drop another amazing story. Drop your thoughts and reactions in the comments. What would you do if your spouse tried to kill you and you survive? Will you take a revenge or disappear forever? 3 days earlier, the morning sun cast golden rays across the infinity pool of Chukwuma Okafor's mansion in Ikoyi, Lagos's most exclusive neighborhood. At 35 years old, he stood on his penthouse balcony overlooking the Lagos Lagoon, a crystal glass of freshly squeezed orange juice in his hand, watching as his gardener, one of 12 staff members, trimmed the imported Italian hedges. This was power. This was success. This was everything he had dreamed of as a barefoot boy in Bakwa village. Baby, come back to bed. Zainab's voice drifted from the bedroom, honeyed and indulgent. Senator Badmus's daughter was used to getting what she wanted, and right now, she wanted her fiancé's attention before her morning yoga session. Chukwuma smiled, the practice, perfect smile that had charmed investors and closed billion-naira deals. Coming, my love, he called back, his British accented English flawless. Years of speech coaching had erased every trace of his Igbo village inflection. His phone buzzed. His executive assistant tunned. "Sir, Forbes Africa wants to do a cover story. The orphan who built an empire." They loved the narrative. Chukwuma's smile widened. The orphan story. It was perfect. Tragic enough to be compelling. Vague enough to be unverifiable. In his version, his wealthy parents had died in a plane crash when he was 18, leaving him a modest inheritance that he'd turned into a tech empire. No one questioned it. Why would they? Successful people didn't come from nowhere in Lagos society. They came from somewhere, preferably somewhere impressive. The truth. That he'd grown up in a mud house with a thatched roof, that his father was a struggling yam farmer, that his mother had sold firewood by the roadside. That truth had been buried deep, along with the boy he used to be. "Accept the interview," Chukwuma said. "Schedule it after the engagement party." He ended the call and returned to his bedroom, where Zainab lay sprawled across Egyptian cotton sheets, her perfectly manicured nails scrolling through Instagram, posting photos of her engagement ring, a 5-carat diamond that cost more than most Nigerians earned in a lifetime. "Your parents would be so proud," she said absently, double-tapping on a friend's photo. "If they were alive to see this." Chukwuma's jaw tightened imperceptibly. "Yes," he murmured, "they would." If only she knew that his parents were very much alive, growing old in a village 400 kilometers away, probably wondering why their successful son's monthly money orders had stopped coming 6 months ago. He'd cut them off when he'd started dating Zainab, when the lie had become too complicated to maintain. The morning proceeded with its usual rhythm. A breakfast of fruit and artisan bread prepared by his French-trained chef, a conference call with investors in South Africa, a fitting for his engagement party suit. By afternoon, Chukwuma was in his study reviewing contracts when his head of security, Ibrahim, knocked on the door. "Sir, there's a situation at the gate." Chukwuma didn't look up from his laptop. "Handle it." "Sir." Ibrahim's hesitation made Chukwuma glance up. The security chief looked uncomfortable. "It's 2 elderly people. They say they're your parents." The world tilted. Chukwuma's blood ran cold. "What?" "An old man and woman. They have your family name. They're asking for you. They look unwell, sir." The man seemed sick. For a moment, Chukwuma couldn't breathe. This couldn't be happening. Not now. Not 3 days before his engagement party. With Zainab upstairs, with 200 of Lagos's elite about to descend on his home. "Don't let them in," he said sharply. "Sir, I said don't let them in." Chukwuma stood abruptly, his chair scraping against marble. "They're scammers. People try this all the time with wealthy men. My parents are dead." Ibrahim nodded slowly, but doubt flickered in his eyes. "They have photos, sir. Old photos. Of you as a child." Chukwuma's heart hammered. Photos. Of course they would have photos. Because they were his parents. His real, living, breathing parents whom he'd been pretending didn't exist. "Bring them through the service entrance," he finally said, his voice low. "To the garage. No one sees them. Do you understand? No one." "Yes, sir." As Ibrahim left, Chukwuma gripped the edge of his desk, his carefully constructed world trembling. He had 2 choices: acknowledge them and destroy everything, or hide them, just for a few days, just until after the party. Then he'd figure something out. 20 minutes later, he walked into the garage, a space larger than most homes, housing his collection of luxury vehicles. And there they were, Mama and Papa Okafor. His mother had aged terribly. The woman who'd once carried water pots on her head with effortless grace now looked shrunken, her wrapper faded and dusty from travel. His father, once strong from farm work, now slouched with illness, his breathing labored. "Chukwuma." His mother's face lit up with joy and relief. She rushed toward him, arms outstretched. "My son. Oh, my son." He stepped back. The joy died in her eyes. "We tried calling." His father said weakly, leaning against a Mercedes. "Your numbers, they don't work anymore. Your brother said you changed them. We had no choice but to come." My heart. "The village doctor says I need to see specialists in Lagos." "We thought." His voice cracked. "We thought you would help us." Chukwuma looked at them, these people who'd given him everything, and felt only panic. They represented everything he'd escaped: poverty, backwardness, shame. "Why didn't you tell me you were coming?" he demanded. "We did. We sent letters with travelers going to Lagos. Did you not receive them?" He'd received them. He'd thrown them away unopened. His mother reached for his hand. "We need your help, NWAM. Your father is very sick, and we wanted to see you. It's been 3 years since you came home. 3 years. I've been busy building my business," he said coldly, pulling his hand away. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under." "We understand pressure," his father said quietly. "We worked until our bodies broke to give you opportunities. We understand sacrifice." The word should have pierced him. But Chukwuma had spent years building walls around his heart, and shame was a powerful mortar. From somewhere in the mansion, he heard Zainab calling his name. Panic seized him. "Listen to me," he said urgently. "You cannot, absolutely cannot, let anyone know you're here. Do you understand?" His mother blinked, confused. "But we are your parents. I have important guests coming. Very important people. This is a crucial time for my business. I need you to stay here, just for a few days. Then we'll sort everything out. I'll get Papa to the best hospital. I promise." "You want us to hide?" his mother asked, her voice small. "In your garage?" "It's temporary," Chukwuma insisted, already moving toward the door. "There's a bathroom over there. I'll have food brought. Just stay quiet." "Chukwuma!" His father called out, stronger now, anger giving him strength. "Have you become so big that you're ashamed of the people who made you?" Chukwuma paused at the door, his hand on the handle. He didn't turn around. "I'll come back later," he said, and fled. Behind him, in the cold concrete space surrounded by millions in luxury vehicles, his parents stood in shocked silence, trying to comprehend what their son had become. And in that moment, the garage became a prison made of shame, where love and sacrifice came to die among the gleaming machines that represented everything they would never be. 27 years earlier, Mbakwa village, Anambra State. Young Chukwuma sat under the mango tree, his bare feet dusty, his stomach growling. He was 8 years old and had just watched his classmates buy meat pie and fauna from the school vendor, luxuries he could only dream about. "And WM, come and eat," Mama called from their small compound. She prepared Gary and groundnut soup again. It was all they could afford. Papa came home that evening with his hands bleeding from tilling another man's farm. He had sold their own land years ago when Chukwuma's younger sister fell sick. She died anyway, and the debt remained. "This boy is brilliant," Papa told Mama that night, not knowing Chukwuma was listening to the thin mud walls. "His teacher says he's the smartest student in the entire school. If we could just get him to secondary school, to university, he could lift us all out of this poverty." "But how?" Mama's voice cracked. "We can barely afford primary school fees. I'll work more farms. You can expand your firewood business. We'll sacrifice everything. Everything. This is our chance, and our only chance." And sacrifice they did. Mama woke at 4 a.m. every morning, walking 5 kilometers into forest to gather firewood, carrying impossibly heavy loads on her head to sell by the roadside. Papa worked 3 different farms, coming home so exhausted he could barely eat. Chukwuma wore the same uniform for 3 years, patched and repatched until it was more patches than original fabric. While other children played football, he studied by candlelight because they couldn't afford kerosene for the lamp. When he gained admission to university, the first person in their entire extended family to do so, his parents sold their last valuable possession, Mama's wedding gold, the thin chain her own mother had given her. "Education is the new gold," Papa said, pressing the money into teenage Chukwuma's hands. "Make us proud, my son, not for glory, but so you never suffer as we have suffered." Chukwuma had cried that day, promising he would never forget their sacrifice. But promises, like gold chains, can be sold for the right price. Present day, the garage. Mama Okafor sat on the cardboard, her body trembling, not from cold, but from shock. She kept replaying her son's face, the coldness in his eyes, the way he'd stepped back from her embrace as if she carried disease. "He's ashamed of us," she whispered. Papa Okafor, struggling to breathe, clutched his chest. The pain was getting worse. "No, he's ashamed of himself. That's different. That's worse." They had arrived in Lagos that morning after 2 days of travel, first by bush taxi from Bakwa to Onitsha, then by bus to Lagos, spending money they didn't have because Papa's heart condition had become critical. The village doctor had been clear. Without specialized treatment, he had months, maybe weeks. "Our son is wealthy now," Papa had told her during the journey. "He'll help us. He's probably been too busy to visit. Running a big business. You know how it is." Mama had wanted to believe that. But the return letters, the disconnected phone numbers, the 3 years of silence punctuated only by impersonal money transfers that had stopped 6 months ago, her mother's heart had known something was wrong. Now, sitting in this cold garage, surrounded by cars that cost more than their entire village's annual income, she understood. Her son hadn't been too busy. He'd been erasing them. "We should leave," Papa said, but even as he spoke, another chest pain made him gasp. "You can't travel like this," Mama said firmly, though tears streamed down her face. "We'll stay. We'll remind him who he is, who we are." A young man in a staff uniform appeared at the side door, one of Chukwuma's workers. He wouldn't meet their eyes as he placed a tray of food on the ground, jollof rice, chicken, bottled water. Food that would have been a feast in their village felt like scraps thrown at dogs. "Sir says to eat," the man mumbled, "and to stay quiet. Very important guest tomorrow." He left quickly, clearly uncomfortable. Mama stared at the food, then at the Rolls Royce her husband leaned against. In its polished chrome, she could see her reflection, an old woman in a faded wrapper, small and insignificant. "Do you remember when he won that scholarship?" she asked suddenly. "He ran all the way home from school, 5 kilometers, screaming with joy. He hugged me so tight and said, 'Mama, I'll make you a queen. You'll never suffer again.'" Papa nodded slowly, his eyes distant with memory. "He was a good boy, kind. He used to share his lunch with children who had none, even though he barely had enough himself." "What happened to that boy?" Mama whispered. "Lagos happened. Money happened. Shame happened." Papa closed his eyes. We became inconvenient truths in whatever story he's telling himself. They ate in silence, the food tasteless despite its quality. Around them, the garage felt vast and empty, a palace for machines, a prison for people. That night, they slept on cardboard boxes, using their traveling bags as pillows. The concrete floor was hard and cold. Papa's labored breathing echoed off the walls. Every few hours, Mama woke to check if he was still alive, her hand on his chest, feeling for the weak, irregular heartbeat. Through the small window, they could see lights blazing in the mansion, music, laughter, life continuing without them. "Tomorrow," Papa said in the darkness, "we tell him the truth, that I'm dying, that we need him not as a rich man, but as our son. Maybe that will wake him up." But Mama Okafor, staring at the underside of a Bentley, wasn't so sure. She'd seen something in her son's eyes that terrified her more than poverty ever had. She'd seen a man who would rather let his parents die than risk his precious reputation. Chukwuma stood in his walk-in closet, selecting his outfit for the day's final engagement party preparations. Behind him, Zainab was on her phone, coordinating with the event planner. "The ice sculptures arrive at noon, the band at 3, and the senator lands at 5, she recited. "Baby, this is going to be the party of the year. Everyone who matters will be here." "Perfect," Chukwuma said, his voice steady despite the knot in his stomach. He'd barely slept, hyper-aware of the 2 people in his garage, like a bomb waiting to detonate. "Oh, and there's a journalist outside," Zainab added casually. "From this day newspaper. She says she's doing a feature on Lagos's power couples. I told security to let her in at 10. Chukwuma's hand froze on his tie. "Cancel it." "What? Why? This is amazing publicity." "I said cancel it." He caught himself, forced a smile. "Sorry, love. I'm just..." Stressed about the technical launch next week. Let's do the interview after the party. Zainab pouted but agreed. Chukwuma exhaled slowly. He couldn't risk anyone poking around, asking questions, discovering his secret. His phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Chukwuma Okafor? A woman's voice, familiar somehow. It's Adana Nwosu, from Bakwu. His blood turned to ice. Adana, his childhood friend, the girl who'd studied with him under that mango tree, who knew everything about his real past. I'm in Lagos for a conference, she continued. I heard you live here now. Doing very well, I hear. I'd love to catch up. Maybe visit tomorrow? Tomorrow isn't good, he said quickly. Oh, but I insist. I've come all this way, and I have something for you, a letter from your parents. They asked me to deliver it personally since you never respond to theirs. The room spun. Adana, please. See you tomorrow at noon, old friend. I'm sure you won't turn me away. She hung up. Chukwuma slumped against the closet wall. This was spiraling out of control. His parents in the garage. Adana coming tomorrow. 200 guests arriving for the party tonight. Everything okay? Zainab appeared at the door. Fine, he lied. Everything's fine. The garage that afternoon. Papa Okafor's condition had worsened. His lips had a bluish tinge, his breathing more labored. Mama had tried the side door 3 times, but it was locked from the outside now. They were prisoners. We need to get help, she said desperately. Your heart. Our son will come, Papa insisted weakly. He has to come. But Chukwuma didn't come. Instead, the same staff member appeared with lunch, set it down without a word, and left. Mama Okafor made a decision. That evening, when she heard movement in the main house, she began to shout, Help, please. My husband is sick. Someone help US. Within minutes, the side door burst open. Chukwuma stood there, fury distorting his features. Are you insane? He hissed. I told you to stay quiet. Your father is dying. Mama screamed back, her fear overcoming her shock at his anger. Look at him. He needs a hospital. Chukwuma glanced at his father, saw the gray pallor, the struggling breaths. For a moment, genuine concern flickered across his face. I'll send a doctor. Tomorrow, after my party. Tomorrow might be too late. It will have to be enough. Chukwuma snapped. Do you understand what you're asking me to risk? Everything I built, everything I become. We made you. Mama's voice broke. We gave you everything. We have nothing left, nothing, because we poured it all into you, and now you treat us like garbage. You made me suffer. The words exploded from Chukwuma, raw and unexpected. Every day of my childhood was humiliation, wearing rags, eating scraps, being laughed at by other children. Do you know what that felt like? Do you? Mama stepped back, stunned. I worked so hard to escape that poverty, Chukwuma continued, his voice shaking, to become someone who matters. And now you wanted to throw it all away? To tell the world I come from nothing. You come from love, Papa whispered from the floor. That's not nothing. Love doesn't pay bills. Love doesn't open doors. Love doesn't get you respect in this city. Chukwuma's hands were trembling. I'm sorry you're sick, Papa. I really am. But I can't help you. Not now. Not publicly. You have to understand. I understand perfectly, Mama said coldly. I understand that I raised a coward, that all our sacrifice created a monster in expensive clothes. The words hit Chukwuma like a slap. He stood there, mouth opening and closing, unable to respond. Get out, Mama said. Go to your party. Dance and laugh while your father dies in your garage. That's the kind of man you are now. Chukwuma fled. Back in the garage, Mama held her husband close, both of them crying silently among the luxury vehicles, surrounded by wealth they could never touch, trapped in their son's shame. Outside, fireworks were being tested for the party. Each explosion sounded like their hearts breaking. The mansion glowed like a jewel. Fairy lights draped every surface. A full orchestra played on a lawn, and Lagos's elite glittered in designer outfits and precious stones. Chukwuma stood with Zainab, greeting guests, playing the perfect host, the perfect fiancé, the perfect self-made orphan. Such a tragic story, his parents dying so young. One society woman whispered to another, "But look how well he's done for himself." If only they knew his parents were dying right now, 100 meters away. Chukwuma downed another glass of champagne. His third? Fourth? He was losing count. He needed to numb the guilt gnawing at his conscience. Chukwuma, Senator Badmus, his future father-in-law, clapped him on the back. "Magnificent party. You've certainly earned your place among us. Your late parents will be proud." "Thank you, sir." Chukwuma managed, the lie acidic in his mouth. The party swirled on. Speeches, toasts, laughter. Everything was perfect. Everything was going according to plan. Then he saw her. Adana Nwosu stood at the entrance, dressed simply but elegantly, her eyes scanning the crowd. She'd come a day early. Of course she had. Their eyes met across the lawn. She smiled not warmly and began walking toward him. Panic seized Chukwuma. "Excuse me," he mumbled to the senator and intercepted Adana halfway across the garden. "Quite the setup," Adana said, looking around. "Very impressive, though I remember when you get excited about a bottle of Coke." "Adana, please, not here." "Were they, Chukwuma?" Her voice was quiet but hard as steel. "Your parents. I know they came to Lagos. I know they came to you." "Were they?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me." She grabbed his arm. "I've known you since we were 5 years old. I know every expression on your face." "Where are they?" Before Chukwuma could answer, a commotion erupted from the direction of the garage. Shouting, his head of security was running toward him. "Sir, it's the old man. He's collapsed." The woman is screaming for help. Everything happened in slow motion, guests turning curious. Zainab's confused face, Senator Badmus frowning, and Chukwuma frozen, unable to move, unable to think. Adana didn't hesitate. She ran toward the garage, and several guests followed, drawn by the drama. By the time Chukwuma reached the garage, a crowd had gathered. His mother was cradling his father's unconscious body, sobbing. Adana was on her phone, calling an ambulance. "Someone help him," Mama cried. "Please, someone help my husband." "Who are these people?" Zainab appeared at Chukwuma's side. "Why are they in your garage?" The question hung in the air. 200 pairs of eyes turned to Chukwuma. His mother looked up, saw him, saw his terrified face. Understanding dawned in her eyes. He was going to deny them. Even now, even as Papa died, he was going to pretend they were strangers. "Chukwuma?" Zainab pressed. "Do you know them?" The moment stretched. This was it. The choice. Truth or lies. Family or status. The boy from Baku or the billionaire of Lagos. Chukwuma opened his mouth. "They're his parents," Adana announced loudly. "His mother and father whom he's been hiding in his garage like dirty secrets." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "That's impossible," Zainab said. "Chukwuma's parents are dead. They died in a plane crash." "There was no plane crash," Adana continued relentlessly. "His parents are poor farmers from Baku village. They sold everything to educate him, and this is how he repays them." The silence was deafening. All eyes on Chukwuma. His mouth worked soundlessly. The carefully constructed lie, the perfect image, everything he'd built, it crumbled like sand. "You told me you were an orphan," Zainab whispered, her face pale. "You told everyone." "I can explain," Chukwuma started. "Explain what?" His mother's voice cut through the chaos like a knife. She stood slowly, leaving Papa in Adana's care. "Explain how you locked your sick father in the garage? Explain how you're ashamed of the people who gave you life? Please, son, explain. I'd love to hear it." The word son rippled through the crowd like electricity. Senator Badmus stepped forward, his face dark with anger. "Is this true, Okafor? Have you been lying to us? To my daughter?" Chukwuma looked around at the condemning faces, the disgust, the shock. Everything he'd feared was happening. Everything he'd worked to prevent. Then he looked at his mother, really looked at her worn face, her exhausted eyes, the way she stood so dignified despite her circumstances, at his father, unconscious on the ground, possibly dying, and he saw himself reflected in the chrome of his Rolls Royce, a coward in expensive clothes. "Yes," he whispered. Then louder, "Yes, they're my parents." Zainab's engagement ring hit the ground with a tiny final clink. The engagement party had imploded spectacularly. Guests fled. Zainab left with her father, screaming about lawsuits and humiliation. Within an hour, Chukwuma's orphan lie was trending on Twitter. His carefully curated life, destroyed in minutes. Now he sat in a private hospital room, watching his father hooked to machines, his mother sleeping in the chair beside the bed. The doctors had stabilized Papa, but the prognosis was grim. Advanced heart disease, requiring immediate surgery that would cost millions. Money Chukwuma had. What he lacked was so much more. Adana sat across from him, her eyes hard. "Why?" she asked simply. Chukwuma stared at his hands. Manicured, soft, hands that had never worked a farm or carried firewood. "I wanted to be someone," he said finally. "Growing up poor, it's not just about lacking money. It's about being invisible, being nothing. I wanted to matter." "So you erased the people who made you matter?" "I thought." His voice cracked. "I thought I could have both, the success and the respect. But Lagos doesn't respect poor people. It despises them. And if they knew where I came from, they'd see you as human," Adana interrupted, "which apparently terrified you more than anything." Mama Okafor stirred, woke. She looked at Chukwuma for a long moment, then stood and walked toward the door. "Mama, please." Chukwuma stood. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." She paused, her hand on the door handle. "Do you know what hurt the most? Not the garage. Not the shame. It was seeing what wealth did to your heart. It made you cruel. I know, and I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't give us back 3 years," she said quietly. "Sorry doesn't erase sleeping on concrete while you drank champagne 20 meters away. Sorry is just a word, Chukwuma." "Then tell me what to do," he cried. "Tell me how to fix this." "You can't fix it. You can only choose who you want to be from now on." She looked at Papa on the bed. "Your father may live or he may die. Either way, you have to live with what you've done. We all do." She walked out to get food, leaving Chukwuma alone with his unconscious father and his guilt. 2 weeks later, Papa Okafor survived the surgery. The recovery would be long, but he would live. The media had a field day with Chukwuma's story. Billionaire's betrayal screamed the headlines. His company's stock dropped. Several board members called for his resignation. Zainab's family threatened legal action for fraud and emotional distress. But something unexpected happened. Common Nigerians, the ones who'd grown up poor, who'd struggled, who understood the toxic shame that poverty creates, they began to speak up. Social media filled with stories of people who'd hidden their backgrounds, denied their families, desperate to escape the stigma of being poor. "I pretended my mother was a housemaid," one woman confessed. "When she died, I mourned alone. I told my wife my parents were dead," another man wrote. "They're alive in the village. I haven't seen them in a decade." Chukwuma's shame became a mirror, reflecting Nigeria's uncomfortable relationship with poverty and class. He read every comment, every article, forcing himself to face what he'd become. Then he made a decision. 1 month later, press conference. Chukwuma stood at a podium, facing cameras and journalists. No prepared speech, no PR team, just him and the truth. "My name is Chukwuma Okafor," he began. "I am the son of farmers from Bakwa village, Anambra State. My mother sold firewood. My father tilled other people's farms. They had nothing, but they gave me everything." He paused, fighting tears. "I repaid them by being ashamed of them, by hiding them, by choosing my reputation over their lives. I cannot undo what I did, but I can change what I do next." He announced his new initiative, the Mbakwa Foundation, dedicated to helping children of poor families access education without the shame he'd experienced. Half his personal wealth would fund it. "I can't make up for what I did to my parents," he concluded, But maybe I can help others avoid becoming what I became, a rich man with a poor soul. 6 months later, Chukwuma sat under the mango tree in Bakwa village, watching his father, stronger now, healthier, work in the small garden Chukwuma had planted. His mother hummed nearby, cooking on her old stove. They'd refused his offers of a mansion. "This is our home," they'd said simply. He visited every month now. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they sat in silence. Forgiveness was a slow process. His company had recovered, though he no longer ran it. He'd stepped back, focusing instead on the foundation. Lego society had written him off. But he found he didn't care as much as he thought he would. Adana visited sometimes too. "Redemption suits you better than Armani," she told him once. He looked at his hands, rougher now from helping the village, from planting trees, from building schools. They were becoming his father's hands. NWAM, his mother called, "Come and eat." This time, he didn't hesitate. He walked into the small compound, sat on the worn bench, and accepted the simple meal with gratitude. It wasn't much, but it was real, and real, he'd finally learned, was worth more than any lie, no matter how beautifully constructed. "Thank you, Mama," he said softly. She touched his cheek gently. "Welcome home, my son." And for the first time in years, Chukwuma felt like he actually had won